Hey everybody, and welcome to Pale in Comparison, a proud member of the Doof Network. In this podcast, my sister from another mister uses her knowledge of the Otherverse to take a look at Pact, Wildbow's least chill work, and I try not to give away any spoilers. I'm Jenniot, and Malia convinced me to come back to Pact.
I'm Malia, and Jenniot convinced me that the bookworm is the coolest other ever. This episode, we are covering Possession, chapters 15.3, 15.4, and 15.5. Before we get into that, however, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning. This podcast is filled with pale spoilers. If you don't know whether Griffin ever wakes up from his sweet dreams and don't want us to tell you, stop now, read Pale, and come back to this podcast. As for Pact, there will be full spoilers of the chapters we are covering.
Whew, and what a set of chapters we are covering this week.
It's so much. I'm really excited to talk about these chapters with you.
Yeah, if I didn't know that Jenny was a better person than this, I would assume that like she did it on purpose, that she, just coincidentally couldn't make it the week that we had 3 insane chapters all to do at once.
So insane. This was great. Yeah, I had my bridal shower today, and so mom's in town, just like a bunch of stuff is happening. And Jenny was like, well, maybe you could like push it back again. I was like, no, I have to talk about these chapters. I have to read more. I can't.
You don't just want to sit on the end of 15.5 for another couple of weeks? Just
the lawyers?
I think from memory, Ruben and I took like a 2-week break after 15.3. And that I remember that being awful.
Why would you do that?
Oh, Ruben went on holiday or something. It was Christmas time, I think.
Oh yeah, bummer.
So yeah, I understand your pain.
Yeah, these are fun. But before we talk about these chapters, we want to remind y'all that there's a fan art contest.
Yes. Theme is "Till Death Do Us Part." To celebrate the wedding in the aforementioned bridal shower was for.
Ooh. I was gonna say like Blake and Alexis.
Not anymore.
Too soon. Okay. It's due. Submissions are due Friday, May 5th. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Cool.
I think, yeah. Well, especially just coming off of Pale, I feel like Monty and Turtle Queen fan art will be hot for this one.
I'm just really excited, even though Monty's scary. They're so great.
And then, I've been saying this a lot on Power Reflections. I'm just going to reiterate it here too. Poke is a valid submission for anybody who's read Poke and thinks maybe they want to submit Poke fan art. One day, Malia, you'll be able to understand.
Hopefully soonish. Yeah.
Well, and because I don't want to get into specifics, but the boy in the couple that I'm talking about from Poke, his name's Ben too, so there'll be a lot for you to relate to when you get there.
Does that sound like a really bad thing?
I'm just glad you're probably not going to read it till after the wedding, so I can't be uninvited for saying that.
Fair.
Well, should we get into these chapters?
Let's do it.
Cool. So, just let me take a deep breath before I get into this quote-unquote summary. So the group is assembling at the top of the Abyssal library. There's only a small pair of shears between them and the exit, but the sort of standoff ends very quickly when Alistair begins drawing a binding diagram for Barbatorum. Blake in the timeless armor try to distract Barbie, and they get some help from a cool new bookworm other, but things don't go very well, even with Dionysus lending a hand and Rose being extra bossy. Luckily, Johannes takes the fall for everyone. The gang moves to the actual exit, and impressed with his performance, the Abyss gives Blake a not-so-exciting job offer. Evan and Green Eyes try to explain why he shouldn't take it, and also Rose is on their side, surprisingly. Ty and Tiff bring up some of their own points. The Abyss tries to throw a bit of Alexis into the deal, but Rose proves that she really is the other half of Blake by making the most unpredictable and bonkers move anyone has done in this story so far. So yeah, Blake gets his bearings in his new digs, aka Rose. He views some old home movies and he meets his new roommate, who we'll call Big C. Outside, Alistair and Rose kind of catch up with their rival cousin couple, Ainsley and Peter, and they all begin to debrief. Meanwhile, back inside of Rose, Blake is trying to make friends with Conquest, but unfortunately, he's no Avery. Conquest starts to put the squeeze on Blake, but is interrupted because our old friend Miss Lewis shows up, and she's taking it pretty personally that Rose took an Abyssal job offer rather than one at her firm. So, Malia, what do you think of these chapters?
So much happened. Also, I feel like I've been trying to make really off the wall bonkers predictions in this story, and I really wish that I had done some sort of brainstorming exercise or something last week and been like, Blake will possess Rose, because who would ever think that that's where this was going? But he named the fucking arc Possession. It's like,
yeah.
It's so upsetting.
Yeah, I think the thing I've learned from following live reads of Pact is that no matter how crazy your predictions are, Blake and Rose will manage to outdo them. It's impossible to keep up with these two. Pact just continuously outdoes whatever. Like, people are like, my crazy prediction is X, and it's like that's only half as crazy as what really happens.
Yeah. I don't know whether to count the big scary thing in the pillar library that we may or may not ever learn anything about as a win for my demon under the house theory, but it feels like the demon under the house got sucked down and is the huge thing in the pillar.
Well, I guess keep an eye out for see. It's kind of crazy that the library was only in it for 3 chapters. I always forget that. It's like such a crazy place. It's wild that it's only it took them 3 chapters to get out.
I'm trying to remember how long they were in the abyss, in the tenements. And that wasn't. Hey, you were here for the tenements episode too.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I think that was only a chapter or 2 as well. Yeah, I'm the abyss specialist apparently, which I can't help but take personally.
Yeah. I mean, just so much in this book moves so much faster. It's thinking about like if this was how Wildbow's been approaching Pale. Yeah, I just think that like things would take a lot longer. It's hard to imagine them like camping out in the abyss for a week or whatever, but it feels like it would just.
Yeah, well, I guess Pale's probably done stuff like this too, because we're talking about these abyssal locations that we're only seen so briefly. But like, you could probably say the same thing about like the fairy courts in Pale. We've seen them, but we haven't really spent time. There was like the excursion there, which was a couple of chapters,
right? And I guess some of the early, like, thinking of Arc 5, where the others are all invading after Sharon breaks the perimeter, and those were kind of like speedy, jumping around.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff changing quickly. It's just these fucking chapters. It was like, okay, we've like maybe managed to keep Barbatorum in the abyss. Question mark. Johannes is dead. Will we ever see Barbatorum again? I don't know where the story is going, right? And then we flash to Blake has to become like a ruler of the underworld. No, just kidding. He's going to possess Rose. And then we flash to like Conquest is a problem and the lawyers are more of a problem. And it's like, oh yeah, we just dealt with Barbatorum. Totally not a concern in my mind right now. And that's insane. And then like Faisal's out there. It's just, or is he? Because like, I don't understand the Johannes possession as well as maybe I thought I did, but we can talk about that when we get there.
I think that'll be a good thing to talk about. But yeah, it's definitely Arc 15. Like, I did come in here wondering if I should change the the little arc intro thing from Wildbow's least chill work for for Jenny, but then I was looking at it and I was like, there's no better way to describe what Arc 15 is doing right now than no chill. Like as you said, this arc just you don't know what to expect because it's just going from bonkers to bonkers.
Yeah, this is up there so far with one of my favorite arcs.
Yeah,
Just
Arc 15 is definitely in my top 2. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll be excited once I'm done to ask what your other favorite arc is.
Yeah, no, I can't talk about that right now, but yes. Shall we go through the chapters?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so 15.3 opens back in the library. They've reached the top. There's this small pair of shears between them and what they currently think is the exit. And there's a bit of a standoff. The chessboard is set up, but the piece ends as Alistair starts drawing his binding diagram.
Alistair continues to surprise me. And I like... It's just, I was like, this is the most annoying little shit. Why is he in this story? Like, his, like, fucking tarot deck. Like, I hate this. And I have, like, completely 180'd. I'm like, Alistair is so great. He's, like, really heroic. He's, like, self-sacrificial. He is, like, really sweet to Rose. And he, like, I don't know, he's just so courageous in this moment. Like, he's the only one that can really stop Barbatorum. And he's like, okay, fuck it, like, let's go. like let's fucking, I'm gonna start doing this. And it's awesome. Yeah. He just, I don't know, continues to surprise me. Blake reminded us of the fact that he keeps being tricked by people in binding circles. And I guess Barbatorum isn't really in a binding circle at this point. But just the idea that Barbatorum is like, I'm gonna put some shears and they're gonna think it's me, and it's gonna be so funny because they're idiots. Like, it's really great.
Well, yeah, and like it's just the Blake talks a lot in here about how like he doesn't feel fear or anxiety so much anymore. But it's like you could still see the result of the kind of mind games of fighting a demon because yeah, like he sees the shears and he's just like, but what if it's a trick? Like I mean, these guys have been through a lot recently, I guess. Like in story time, it's been like an hour since he was at Mara's place.
Oh my god.
Like, no wonder he's kind of having a meltdown, I guess.
Yeah, and just the idea that, like, delaying because you think that Barbatorum is right there, and then later realizing that you could have just, like, ran across and gotten out, like, that would be so painful. And, like, thinking about that even being a possibility is such a mindfuck, and you're just like, it's awful.
Yeah. But at least Alistair is here, because you're right. It's I can't even remember when it happens, but you go from thinking Alistair is the smarmy villain to like, is he a good guy now? It's so weird. I love it.
I remember reading his interlude. I was like, you know, he's still a little shit, but I kind of like him. And then just something, yeah, I think when Blake learns that Alistair and Rose are engaged, like, right, when they like have that talk and they almost make that deal, and then Molly interrupts or whatever, that I think I was like, I am on board with this character now. Yeah, and I mean, it's funny how like in 15.5 we get to see in Rose's head and how she's like, he has a really punchable face, but he's also kind of hot. And I'm just like, yes, this is this man. Although he's not doing as annoying of shit anymore, but maybe he's just like found the grace within himself or something.
Yeah, he's also surrounded by Thorburns now, which like maybe it's all relative, right? It like you could put anyone next to Peter and it's like, oh, he's a really nice guy.
that is, yeah, a really good point. If Alistair was kind of being like a douchebag and then there was Peter, like, it would be too much. But also maybe it would just drown out. He would be drowned out.
I also love Blake's little analysis of Rose and Alistair as a couple. Like he's sort of like, it's not a pairing that's of love yet, but he doesn't think they're a bad match, which, given Blake and Rose's relationship, feels like about as positive as Blake's going to get for her being in a relationship, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting how well he knows her. I think later on, before he's in her head, he picks up on like she Rose gives Alistair like a hug or something, and like maybe it was just like super fucking weird and awkward and everyone thought it was weird, but like I don't know, I just feel like Blake is picking up on a lot of Rose's awkwardness and weirdness,
Hmm.
just because of like how well he knows her. And it's nice thinking like it'd be weird if yes, these two are super in love now, um and this isn't just like kind of a really fucked up situation that they're trying to make the best of. But I'm surprised that it's how supportive and stuff of each other they are, but I guess maybe they realize like this is happening, and so we might as well try to make the best of it.
Yeah, because I guess, I mean, we don't know exactly what deal they made,
Mhm.
what the deal they made is, but I imagine it's not too easy to get out of the marriage, right? So I guess, like, if you're in a world where it's either like be in this marriage or be forsworn, I guess you got to try and make it work.
Mhm. And
Not an ideal
yeah.
situation, but
It's also just wild, like Alistair showed up there with an engagement ring, and like we didn't see the conversation of like you will try to marry my half granddaughter. But I mean we don't see him like freaking out about it in his head, or like really fighting out or being like this is awful. We just see him being like, okay, time to propose to this woman. And that's pretty wild.
yeah. Oh, so do you think it's working out so far? Then this his plan to marry Rose, was this a pro or a con move?
Oh, interesting. I think the issue is like Grandma Rose is gonna cut her grandchild in half and unleash chaos. And so given the knowledge of that fact, like I think the Bahams are doing better than the Duchamps. Um and better than Johannes.
I
So
think everyone's doing better than Johannes right now, to be fair.
what a baby. I love it. Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to wonder what it would have been like if they'd made whatever his name was head of the family, the like bland kid, um, that I don't know if we ever actually met. Cause yeah, Alistair's made a bunch of like insane moves, but without this knight, they wouldn't have. Oh hey, then he made a knight and he made it night. But without the suit of armor, they wouldn't have had a chance really, I guess, against Barbatorum. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, I guess we'll see as as the story continues.
Yes.
Um, I also wanted to quickly bring up the Blake uses this chessboard analogy and sort of explains how everyone is their own sort of chess piece. Except there's no pawns. There's just a Blake. Because he kind of, and it's funny. This is one of those lines that hit me very differently having read Pale than it did when I just read Pact. But he makes a note of there's no other sacrificial pawns because there's no other others. Like all the others are gone already, so there's no
Oh.
sacrificial pieces. And I was like, oh, that's not very nice, Blake. Like, but that I don't think I heard that line like that when I just read Pact. But yeah, what do you think about Blake's chessboard analogy?
Yeah, I thought it was really fun. It's really striking visually, being able to imagine them like in a line, the relative roles and powers that they have like in the upcoming fight and in the group as a whole, and just the idea of Blake as like the ultimate pawn. um it hurts, and it's like it rings very true. He like it reminded me of the fool card again, I guess, as well. But like Alistair and Rose's the king and queen was perfect. And in this fight, like I mean Blake is probably one of the most useful uh pieces, I guess, on the board. Definitely one of the most mobile, not very pawn like in his movements, but
Mm.
Alistair is like the person they need to protect the most, who can't move a ton because he's drawing on the ground. Rose like almost like uh cinches the whole thing. Like she almost fucking like dominates with her badassery. Like I don't know. That was queen energy. And then I'm trying to remember if Jeremy was in like the bishop position or whatever, but he was really important trying to like hold everything together. Johannes ended up being really important. And then like, I don't know, there's some behaves or whatever. Like that just felt like, yeah. um but yeah, it is, and it's interesting how sometimes it feels like Blake doesn't think of himself as an other, um, in that he doesn't really think of himself as, well, I don't know. He does think of himself as disposable because he's constantly like, it's better that I die than all these other people, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, it doesn't feel like he's thinking like I'm the only other left for them
Yeah.
to use. I don't know.
He does also have that interesting thought where he says Rose builds things whereas he tears them down. And that's why he's deferring to Rose at this point. Which I thought was very interesting given the parallels between angels and demons in terms of creating versus destroying. Like
Yeah.
Blake has created a dichotomy and labeled himself the demon.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of like what has Rose built? Like Blake has killed people and used the hyena, and that's a very like destruction type item. He's really chaotic, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I see either of them as one or the other.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Blake doesn't have the best history of like accurately gauging his limits,
Right.
and yeah, stuff. So that's fair.
Right. And yeah, it's nice, or he's just very willing to put everyone else in front of himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to a fault, you could say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I guess we'll get further into this fight with Barbatorum, which basically is Blake and the timeless armor mostly trying to take him. The bookworm comes in here too. Best other, really fun, really
Oh my
cool.
god.
Um, but yeah, things don't go well. There's a bunch of moves played out here. Dionysus lends a hand at one point. The part you mentioned before where Rose gets really bossy, and tries to basically send Barbatorum to his room. None of it really works.
She's girl boss. Girl boss energy.
It hurts reading it every time because it works for a bit and like it sort of lets you just get your hopes up a little bit that this will help.
And then it's just like, ugh. It was so close. And it was great. Yeah, it just, ugh.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the part where Blake does get caught by Barbatorum for a bit, and then Alexis, quote unquote, saves him by shooting him with a giant lightning bolt and causing his stomach to explode out.
It worked.
Yeah, it does work, to be fair.
Oh, that part was something else. So I didn't understand why this horrible human centipede thing was here. Human centipede cobra. And so the fact that it's called the bookworm is great.
Yeah. Well, I think to be fair, I think that's just the fan name that
Right.
yeah.
But it's
I
like,
think
because
yeah.
it's a library, and like the only thing that makes it sense for it to be here thematically is if it's a bookworm. So that's very fun.
Yeah. I also wondered if maybe like because the abyss is like moving others in here, and I wonder if the bookworm is just like a really high tier boogeyman, and so the abyss was kind of freaking out a little bit about Barbatorum and was just kind of like, you go in there, like you can't bookworm, you sort of fit, like books,
Help.
bookworms, that'll do. Please stop this evil demon inside of me.
But yeah, this might be the most like disgusting and upsetting thing that I've ever
Yeah.
read in a wild book story, except for maybe Nursery and Ward. That was pretty bad. But
There's
this
no
is,
fan art of this thing yet. Can you believe that?
thank God. I had totally blocked this out in my memory between my first and second read, and my notes are just like, I forgot about this. I really don't want this. No thanks. It's so gross. I hate this. I hate this. Like, It's so gross.
There's so much emphasis put into how like moist and wet it is too, which is also not very nice.
And just like the experiences of the individual
Yeah.
humans and all of it. It's so bad. Blah.
Good times. I love this thing.
Bookworm's such a good name. Yeah, okay.
And I mean, just remember, it's now canon. You said it's your favorite other in the intro, so that's legally binding, verbal contract.
No, this is the worst thing I've ever experienced. I was like, oh, the human centipede thing. How do I make it worse? Like,
Yeah. It feels like Walbo was trying to one up the human centipede movies.
he did it. I haven't seen those movies, but he did it. And then it's like also, I think with boogeymen in particular, after reading Pact, I'm always going to think like, how did they get there? And just this chain of like over 100 people, and like, how did they get there? I don't want to know. It's so
Here's another fun game we could play. And I've done this a little bit as a listener while listening to the podcast, but I think after Pale, like we've seen in Pale, Kenneth is really good at finding places for people, helping them redeem themselves, like finding their niche. So like, how would Kenneth help the bookworm? Where, like, how does, 23.10, the next chapter, the bookworm arrives in Kenneth. Where do we help it set up shop? How do we integrate the bookworm into Kenneth?
Huh. Was it actively trying to attack anything? Because at one point it's just sort of like a big shield blocking Blake and bleeding all over everything. Maybe it could like be underground as a part of like the perimeter, and they can like, I don't know.
If they make it long enough, it could be the perimeter.
No. They can't make it longer. They probably can't deconstruct it.
I mean, it would have to be in Kenneth below, right? Like it.
Oh yeah.
I don't feel like it vibes with Kenneth found or Kenneth above.
But Kenneth below, maybe. I mean, it kind of depends on like what does it want, and I want to see it go down the slide. I think that'd be really fun.
Oh, it could work for the vice principal, and like kids could play with it at lunch at the school, like because it's like a merry-go-round sort of thing. Like everyone hops on, like it could be a ride.
Yeah. Okay. Would the vice principal somehow make it like even bigger or something? Like her mount or whatever it's called.
Oh, interesting.
That'd be horrifying.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't entrust it to her.
But some sort of fun, ride could. I'm into it.
Yeah, I because there's other boogeymen too you could play this game with. We don't have to like. There was the diary paper girl who didn't Blake get her last chapter to promise not to hurt people anymore.
Yeah.
So she could go to Kenneth.
She should totally go to Kenneth. Maybe she could hang out with Verona because books. I don't know.
But there's also the faceless woman and the revenant.
Mm-hmm.
The last episode I was on, there was that the boogeyman they let go.
The suit guy.
Yeah.
He was so great. I hope he ends up at Kenneth. Every time anything like Abyssal tangential happens in Pale Now, I'm like, have I seen this boogeyman? Like, should I recognize them? Like, ooh. And so far, same. I don't know, but it's exciting every time. Because I appreciate Wildbow's kind of commitment to not, like, spoil Pact and Pale or whatever to kind of keep them separate. But there have been enough, like, tiny hints at crossovers that it's just like...
Yeah, like, especially as the Abyss has become a bigger part of Pale.
Mm-hmm.
It must have been harder not to, as you say, just slip in a couple of familiar boogeymen.
And I feel like if the faceless woman was mentioned, just like straight up Pale readers would be like, it's dark mist, like what's going on? Like they'd like obsess over her.
Abyssal mist, yeah. I do remember
Abyssal.
people. I do remember people very early in Pale thinking that the faceless woman could be that Miss could be the faceless woman.
Uh-huh.
There was a
Yeah,
point of confusion very early on.
I remember being excited when we see her in like the first arc because I was like, it's sort of like Miss, like
But actually, they've got fairly different personalities.
yeah, yeah. Miss is way more rigid.
Yeah, it's a tad less violent.
True.
Um, something else I want to talk about this section. This is, I think, this is also the part where Ellie and Kristoff just book. They
Hmm.
sneak around the side and just run.
I was so proud of them.
Yeah.
Like yeah, because I think they kind of have to like they climb down a little bit and climb back up, and yeah, just like Thorburns sticking together and helping each other because like they can't do anything. Like they need to just get out, and she is helping Kristoff, and they're crossing those immediate family boundaries to come
Hmm.
together more. And that was great.
Yeah, because no, wait. There's no sense, especially from Blake, of him being like, "I can't believe they're abandoning us here." Right? Like,
Uh
there's no judgment on them running. It's just like, yeah, I mean, you've got a shot. Fucking go. Like, get out of
right.
here.
It's like don't look at the demon and like good on you.
Yeah. Well done. Leave. Yeah.
It was funny how they're like so not a concern for Barbatorum or something that when Blake's like, fuck, don't look at him, go. Barbie's like, what? Are you talking to someone? What's going on? You're just
He's
like,
like trying to figure out if Blake's pulling something, and it's like, no, he's just
he's trying to save some newbies, some muggles.
yeah. What else? This is a pretty big segment. Any other parts we want to call out?
Yeah, we mentioned that Alexis strikes Blake with lightning. That's fun. Um oh, one thing that is really cool that I was like super into is how Barbatorum will throw the shears and like jump into them and jump out of them and like throw them again like
That's
fucking
so.
cool.
It's so like that's a hack. Like it's such a cheap move. Like that's not fair.
It's so fucking cool, and I can imagine like him practicing, like getting so it just kind of like Avery just like black ropes all around whatever, no big deal. And I kind of imagine Barbatorum like throwing the scissors and like because I feel like he could just like not stand on anything, he just as long as he keeps the momentum or whatever. And that's horrifying. Just like you can't. I mean, he's a demon,
Hmm.
but you can't. He can come and get you
Yeah.
by
Well, I mean,
by yeeting himself.
yeah. I mean, he could travel into space theoretically, right? Like if he just kept throwing himself higher and higher up, like that's really cheap space travel.
Yeah. Maybe demons. They're everywhere.
It's also like the thing where you said like of him practicing it just had me picturing like a teenage Barbatorum, like a young horse's head on a teenage body, just like practicing throwing his shears. I like we need the Barbie origin story prequel episode.
Just did some like how like knife throwing or whatever you gotta practice. He just
Yeah.
yeah. Also there was a part where I thought Alistair got
Mm.
um something about the way it was phrased where I think like something like the shears closed on Alistair. I thought it meant like they closed, it was
Oh,
done, not
oh, I
like they
think
were
that's very
closing
on.
in.
I think that's very on purpose by Wildbow. Yeah.
It was just like "Ah!" And then it was like, wait, what, he's not okay. And that was upsetting. I thought he did,
He does. He
but
does lose his hand a bit after that, though.
right. And that's gotta suck. It was
Yeah.
nice that he saved Jeremy. I really like, I don't know how much hope to have in the story necessarily. And but I do hope that Jeremy and Sandra like come through this and like go live together somewhere nice.
It's
Um
hard not to ship them, isn't it? Like, is shipping the right word? They're already married. You know what I mean.
but they're like, no, it's over. It's over. And I just feel like if Jeremy keeps like Alistair lost his hand, Jeremy needs to give us Sandra. as like payment. Everything has a price, and the price of Alistair losing his hand was Jeremy and Sandra's relationship or something. Vice versa. Whatever.
Wait, so you've totally lost me. Are you suggesting Jeremy gives Sandra the hand?
No, I'm saying that like we will get Jeremy and Sandra together, and the price for that was Alistair's hand.
Oh, okay.
Like if that doesn't happen, then Alistair losing his hand wasn't a
It
fair.
was for nothing.
Yes. Jeremy only has worth insofar as he's with Sandra.
Well, there is actually a line. I think we catch one snippet of what he is saying to Dionysus before the smiting, the act of God. And it's implied that he's doing something with his domain to do it. So
Oh yeah.
if he's like given up part of his domain or something to his god, then you're right. Like he's got less and less worth as an individual, and he needs to get back with his ex.
Mm-hmm. She helps him be his best person, his best self. But yeah, and then we learn that Blake doesn't know where Alexis is, and he freaks out and he tries not to think about it, and
Yeah.
we move on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next chapter. Yeah, so basically things aren't going so hot. No one's really sure what they're going to do, and then Johannes / Faisal pull a move. Johannes takes the fall, and Barbatorum is defeated.
Yeah, fucking Johannes. So this, I'm not sure exactly what to think about Faisal and what's happening in terms of like it felt like at the end of Faisal's interlude that he was like fully in control of Johannes, and so I just like wasn't trusting him at all. But the thing that feels like this is Johannes and not Faisal is, tell that angel to go fuck himself, which such a good, like, so yes, so good. Like as like the veins in his neck are turning black, like so fucking cool. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I love this man.
So my understanding, and I'm pretty sure from memory, people explained this to me when I read the chapter because I had the same confusion. I think it's like it is Faisal possessing him when Johannes says like I'd hoped for more, like I thought I might
Uh-huh.
have to force it, but I think
Uh-huh.
I can leave this up to you. And that's like Faisal, and then he gives control back to Johannes because he knows Johannes will sacrifice himself.
Okay, yeah, because the pieces weren't quite making sense, and it was just that line where I was like, okay, this is Johannes, but yeah,
Yeah.
and so this is Faisal knowing that this will keep Barbatorum in the abyss, question mark, because Faisal wanted Barbatorum to torture them all for eternity, and I guess they're close enough to the surface that he was worried Barbatorum would get out.
Yeah, or it's hard to know exactly what he meant by he hoped for more,
Uh-huh.
but my understanding of it is definitely Faisal says that and then gives Johannes control because he knows Johannes will sacrifice himself, and that's when Johannes starts saying damnation and then tells them to tell Faisal to go fuck himself, which, given the
Ah,
circumstances,
fair.
is actually a pretty nice thing. Like, I feel like you could say worse.
And then the fact that Blake's like, okay, and just like slashes his eyes immediately, like no hesitation, completely, and that, like, I mean, it doesn't feel like cool that fixed it Barbatorum dead forever, but presumably he is somewhat trapped for a bit or something. He needs a reflective surface, question mark. And then the big monster in the pillar grabs the body and slowly drags it. It's so good. Yeah, I don't have any idea whether it's like, yeah, Barbatorum's definitely gonna come back, or like we just never learn what that thing is. We never see Barbatorum again. Like it's a fun like thing out there just beyond our reach,
Mm.
just beyond the scope. And I love that idea. But I can also see like the demon lawyers pulling Barbatorum and other things back into play. But um but in honor of Johannes, I have a poem.
So are these still poems for problematic men, or?
Well, I had a poem for Kathy. So now it's
I
just
mean,
sort
she
of
was problematic.
yeah. Johannes is problematic.
Yeah, that's very true, actually.
Yeah, now just I'm like, for significant deaths in the story, I'm gonna try to pull poems. Um okay, this is called A Gifted Child's Cosmos by Kiana Wilson. Gifted. It is the sweet taste of colors and shapes splashing on your tongue. It is the rough touch of reality, scraping, scratching, clawing relentlessly at the idealistic dimensions, wavering and flowing within your mind. It is the sour stench of wind, fire, water, and earth, rotting and rusting beneath the plight and destruction of human ignorance. It is the sight of blinding waves of propulsing photons bombarding into the pupils, paralyzing your occipital lobe into a glitching seizure. It is the deafening clamor of bangs, bells, rings, rumbles, clings, clangs, voices, cars, freeways, people, and everything. It is the feeling of overwhelming joy and marvel, ideas buzzing, beeping, and bustling in a piercing and perpetual swarm within your head. It is the breathtaking exhilaration of lightning firing inside your mind, blood streaming with sparking neurons, electricity discharging at antimatters of reality, Marshall atoms vibrating, detonating defenses of your inner realm of freedom, electrifying every breath stolen from the circuits of the wind into the eternal pamphlet of human ingenuity. Like time is stolen into reality, imprisoned by time in everything, though your mind is freely, timelessly eccentric. It is as if it were the quantum foam in which packets of energy randomly erupt into an expanding, accelerating, dense cosmos that is your mind's space-time. Anticipation lurking inside some primeval atom, tussling with explosive potential of energies, burning with innovation and passion. Radical theories, revolutionary ideas, groundbreaking discoveries crashing within your cosmos. Though you are always cautious, because at any moment, the dark matter pushing and guiding your cosmos becomes a teeny weeny bit too intoxicated from feeding off of the energy swimming through you. Your energy could build into a fire breathing, roaring black hole that sets an inferno within your cosmos until the light, noise, numbers, patterns, colors, words, shapes, ideas are blaring, blasting, and booming in a thunderous harmony until finally all of the atoms within your brain are sucked away and all of the energy and power are compressed into an atomic bomb that ignites an ear-splitting explosion deep within you until your extraordinarily picturesque situation of a Googleplex of pixels that constitute the major motion picture that is your imagination slowly drains into your veins and gradually seeps through your skin until your entire being is drowning in smoke and steam from the sweat coalescing onto your spirit as the remnants of yet another cycle, remaining until your new cosmos is born. It inherits every single string within every single atom of the previous cosmos, and the cycle continues until there is not one atom of oxygen left in your body, because apparently the powerful intensity and energy of your being is too brilliant and blindingly bright to contentedly be contained, not even for just one infinity to obey the laws of physics that govern the universe. But what does that matter to you? Your universe has its own set of laws.
R.I.P. Johannes. That's actually that was a great poem. I'm amazed at your ability to find such a good, like, relevant poem.
I don't know. Like, I just Googled like poem for a gifted child or something like that. And that was one of the first ones to come up. And I was like, whoa, I love it. It's longer than I thought it would be reading it out loud, but I've been weirdly obsessed with this man this whole story, and it was a really good end.
I think that's really funny because I'm pretty sure I spent the whole story convinced he was a villain, and I got heartily proven wrong in this chapter.
Yeah, I can't remember if I was like, I didn't trust him, but I was like, what is his deal? What is this domain? I wanted to learn about this man. And it's a bummer.
I also quickly I noticed you've got in your notes here. We talked about Alistair missing his hand, but we didn't mention that's the hand with the Bahame ring on it.
Right. And it's like, don't know what that means.
I think that's exactly what Alistair says, isn't it?
Yep. And so yeah, I guess was the ring, I guess thinking about it, I was assuming the ring was like in the abyss somewhere, but maybe it was destroyed when his hand was uh pierced by the scissors, and that feels bad for the Behaim family somehow. Um I guess abyssal rings or abyssal energy somehow leaking into their family through the ring also sounds bad. If it is lost in the abyss, it'll eventually find its way back to them. I think I remember
Yeah,
something like that.
that makes sense.
Um
Because you can do that with like implements and stuff. And I feel like if you had a ring that was the key to all your family's power, you'd take measures to give it the same features.
right. Yeah, I hope it's not just like the Behaims are doomed forever. And based on us potentially seeing Ainsley in Pact, she wasn't totally powerless, so maybe it's fine. Huh.
um, yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we'll see. But yeah. So, basically, they've made it across the chessboard even after Barbatorum smashed it to pieces.
Woohoo!
And now that Blake, the pawn, has made it to the other side, he says, "King me." And the Abyss says, "Okay, but I'm going to do it my way." Because yeah, this is where he gets the job offer from the Abyss, which is be the Guardian. Stay here in this cool little forest I made for you, and
Forever.
be here forever.
It and then again I think of all of the other entrances or exits to the abyss that have these beings there, and they all probably ended up here somehow, somewhat like how Blake did. Although maybe more of them or some of them were more excited and willing. I don't know if that's really what the abyss is all about. It doesn't seem to like excited and willing. Um but like the ink guy had wanted to be like a gatekeeper or something. And yeah, I think I almost had a thought in arc 9 when we learn about these dudes that, like why don't they leave? And it makes sense that like no they just can't. Um
Yeah,
but presumably they want to, and so they all must be in some sort of situation where they had to agree to stay. And that's like really heartbreaking. But I wonder how many of them, because they're not really letting people out unless, sometimes people are trying to make deals or whatever. But if Blake did have this job, like would he just let a bunch of people go through, or would he like, would he fight the biggest baddest dudes and let the businessmen or whatever leave? Like it's interesting thinking, because like Blake is a badass, and so I guess the Abyss is like, yeah, cool, more of
yeah.
this please.
I mean, it's kind of a compliment that it wants him. Like, this seems like a pretty important job. Because the Abyss's whole thing is nobody fucking likes it there. So presumably these guardians like have to be somewhat impressive. So
Hmm.
like, it's kind of like Blake's kind of rude here because it's a bit of a compliment.
It's also the only thing I think that would have made this a little bit more heart wrenching is if June had been here.
Oh, yeah,
Um, because it's pulling, like the locket. The hyena pieces was really neat. Uh, he thinks he maybe hears the bike. The birds that he can't quite see. It's all just like kind of core early Blake stuff. And this was sad. Um,
yeah. And it's like I think it was Pale where we weren't that the Abyss people used to think it was hell, and you can really see that with the offer because like as you said, like this Blake talks about how this is a torture kind of specifically designed for him.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and
like
it just yeah.
oh sorry,
I was gonna say, it just sucks that it has to be torture, that it
yeah,
can't actually be like a nice gig.
yeah. There is an element of like why are you like this Abyss? Like
Hmm.
yeah. I also I thought it was funny. I feel like people have spent this entire story wanting Blake to die, and then he finally agreed to die. Like let Rose kill him, and now the Abyss is like, no, not even that. Actually, I want you to be alive forever.
Yeah, it's awful. And Blake is sort of like, well, I guess I'm probably doing this even though I hate it and I hate everything. And Evan's like, fuck you, fuck these
Yeah.
people, fuck you. Like, you're not doing this. I can't stress this enough. Absolutely no. If people start talking, then like I lose my edge, so we're not gonna start talking and we're just not gonna do this. I think it's interesting how Evan's like, I'd be a super great monster, but like Blake isn't meant to be a monster. Blake's meant to fly. When like Evan is like almost like an incarnation of escape and like
Yeah.
freedom and movement. I'm like, you're also kind of meant to fly, buddy, but yeah, you also are more excited about being lit on fire, I guess. So uh but just it's so great how he really stands up here and is like, no, like Blake is a person, y'all are taking advantage of him, like absolutely not.
I love his line. The last time I let you guys talk, you talked him into letting you kill him. It's like, I could save him from dragons and giants, but I can't save him from sacrificing himself. So Evan's such a treasure.
Mm-hmm. I've been for honestly kind of a long time. My fiance and I have been talking about just like baby names that we like. They're kind of it's fun to talk about, and I'm really, really trying to sell him on Evan. Like I'm like pretty sure that there's like a pretty decent chance that if we had a boy, he'd be named Evan, and I'm so thrilled about that. And like maybe someday Ben will understand why. uh, um.
That's amazing. Because and especially in terms of like characters to name like a kid after, like you can't get just a more pure good boy than Evan.
I know. He's so good. And Green Eye shows up and she's
Yeah.
also like, well, first she like drapes herself all across the throne like a fucking badass. Um Partly because like she knows it won't mean anything. Cuz I don't think she'd want this job either. Uh but just them being so like, no, Blake, like don't destroy yourself is nice.
Yeah. And she obviously comes in clutch here because basically what happens is well, also weirdly Rose is the only other person on Blake's side, which is very surprising. And I think this is where Alistair starts to be like, okay, that's weird. But Green Eyes is the one who basically brings up that everything's meant to have a price, and it doesn't seem like they're going to pay Blake to make this sacrifice, so they should do that.
Right. Um and Rose's point of like, we will pay for this eventually is interesting.
Mm.
Um and an interesting like reason for why she would want to do this. I don't know if she's like deceiving me, or because like, a couple arcs ago it was just like Rose like kind of sucks and like really isn't great at people and isn't great at all this stuff, and then she was like, well, Alistair doesn't want his life to suck, and so I'm trying to prove to him that it won't suck by being like kind of decent to you, Blake. But then that was like an interesting step forward. And then they're in the house and Blake is like, okay, I got to somehow communicate this like concept to Rose. And he's like, "Oh wait, maybe she's trying to communicate something to me, and like we did used to be the same person." And it feels like since that moment they've been like good to each other. Like, Blake is like, like, hey, good job, nice try. After Barbatorum, he, saves her when the guys grab her in the pillar. She even at one point, like, even gets Blake to go up the stairs before she shoots something last episode. I don't remember. But like, I don't know, they're just like good. And so I feel like nervous about the whole like, y'all are supposed to destroy each other and maybe you agreeing isn't like working against, like maybe that's not a good thing, maybe that's not working against that, but it just makes me so happy to see them trying.
Yeah.
And to see her being like, I mean, I maybe it's just that she's like there, but for the grace of Grandma Rose go I, like like she and Blake were like the same thing at the beginning of this story, and now he's like a fucked up boogeyman dude, and that could have been her, I guess. feel like I'm just sort of rambling. Anyway, I love Rose.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. Oh, I'm just having to like no comment poker face throughout all this. But yeah, it's because you're right. It's like they're weirdly, well, especially what we're heading towards next chapter. Like they seem to be weirdly backing each other up, and that doesn't
Mhm.
make sense if they're supposedly meant to be destroying each other. So it's yeah, it's ripe for tinfoiling, I think.
Yeah, and it's just like, is it just that Ambrose was like the best, most well-adjusted, like awesome person ever?
Hmm.
Or is this somehow I mean, like, Blake's getting crushed to death by the incarnation of conquest, so things are going super swell for him. But like, is I don't know, stuff like this just gives me hope that like somehow it'll all get fixed and either, like Ambrose will be healed and rejoined into like one person, or Blake and Rose will be able to like have chill lives relatively. But it just doesn't feel like, considering what demons are and what they do, like that doesn't seem like a satisfying option in this story. It feels like it kind of breaks the rules we've established. But
Hmm.
then, like, so maybe a rule is that Blake and Rose aren't two halves of the same person, and really it is one of them's a half of Grandma Rose. And so they're not going to destroy each other, which doesn't make sense based on everything we've seen and everything we see in 15.5, but whatever. Like, I don't know.
No comment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the debate continues as to whether Blake should take this offer, and this is where Ty and Tiff sort of step up and they make a point, and then they change their minds. And in response, the Abyss tempts Blake with a bit of Alexis.
Oh, this was really painful. I didn't believe that Alexis was dead.
Hmm.
I don't know what I mean, we just see a like, oh fuck, where's Alexis? And then we're just moving on, and like it's too fast to like think about all of the characters and where everyone is or whatever. But at least so far, like it seems like the Abyss shows Blake things to hurt him, but it seems like they're all true.
Yeah.
Um and so yeah, Alexis like fell and died, and now part of her or something kind of resides in the Abyss, insofar as there is a image of a girl smoking a cigarette that can haunt Blake. And then immediately I was like, Edith? Like I was just like is Alexis somehow part of the girl by candlelight? And then I was like, no, move on. Okay. um but this
yeah.
is really sad,
Oh,
and
sorry. Yeah.
I'm not reading a poem yet, in part because I didn't have time to find one, and in another part, it doesn't feel like we're done with Alexis yet.
Hmm. No
But
comment.
maybe we just are, because get fucked, Blake. You were cut in half by a demon. You don't get to talk to your like girlfriend. The end.
I also like the other side of this to me is my understanding of this is that the Abyss is sort of saying, and I think Blake mentions this. He's like, "Oh, the Abyss is sort of saying you can have Alexis in here with you too
Mm-hmm.
if you take the job." Is that a good thing? Like, yeah, she can be here forever too. Like in this hell that I made for you. Like, is this really a perk?
Right. I mean, a more selfish or desperate or lonely person might say yes until, their loved one is brought back to hate them forever for doing this to them. Um, it's also just that, like, I mean, it's just frustrating, and maybe this is just like how this story is going to go, because not everything is like neat and tidy, but it's so frustrating that Blake could never be like, "Hi, what the fuck, you betrayed me." And like maybe it just wouldn't have meant that much because she doesn't even remember him, but
Hmm.
it was waiting for them to be able to have a conversation where, I can't even look at you, like blah. Um
Yeah. Things are definitely not resolved between them right now.
right. Um and maybe Blake will just die and it'll be over. Uh I am I was thinking the whole time, like, nah, like Tiffany will be the one to like die because she's like, that would make us really sad, but it's not Alexis. Uh yeah. And there's still time. Ugh.
uh, in in lighter news, there's also a funny part here where Rose kind of baits Alistair because Alistair's trying to make the point that Blake isn't a full person, so he's not as much of a loss. And then Rose sort of calls him out on that logic, reminds him who he's engaged to, and it's very funny.
Yeah, it's nice that he backed down very quickly. God. And this part's just heavy though, because it is Blake's fault that Ty and Tiff are here, but also the idea that I can't resent you because I don't remember any of that is interesting. I feel like I could resent someone for getting me into this situation even if I didn't remember that it happened.
I think I'd personally find it easier to resent that person if I didn't remember them.
Right. Like you didn't see the context, and you don't remember how he tried to be open and whatever. It's just oh, I'm in the literal abyss because this fucking guy.
Yeah, I think it's a great it's a tough ethical dilemma because it's I think Ty and Tiff, their argument of "What's your fault? I'm here" it's a good point.
It's pretty strong, yeah. Rose saying Blake was programmed to accumulate allies is kind of interesting. He didn't have the option almost. And I wonder if Grandma Rose was yes, and he'll drag his fucking friends in Toronto that I hate into this mess. Or if she just didn't realize how incredibly extra her grandchild was.
Yeah, anything else from this section?
I don't think so.
Okay, then we'll move into the last part of 15.4, which is Rose creates a positive binding environment for Blake by doing something incredibly reckless, silly, and unpredictable, by inviting him to possess her.
This was so good. Yeah, her first thing is I'm the Thorburn Diabolus. That seems cool and important. Abyss, I will be a scourge for you. Let us out. And the Abyss is okay. Bitch, please. Do you see this boogeyman? Come on. And it forms the path to try to taunt the others to leave, now Blake won't have a choice because it's not going to let him leave and whatever. And they're no, stop, don't. And I mean, this is just another moment of Blake and Rose are so good. And she says, you could have thrown me off the side of the pillar or at least let me fall. And Blake's yeah. And immediately it's okay, cool. Do you know the familiar ritual? And I was what? So to be fair, it could have been more insane.
Yeah, something that Blake and Rose definitely both share, so Ambrose must have had in ample supply, is just an ability to lead with the worst part of their plan. They both do this. They both say the worst possible opening line to introduce their plans.
Right, because they've kind of thought through a bunch of stuff really quickly.
Yeah.
And say something that feels like a non sequitur, and also bananas.
Yeah, because poor Alistair's here, and he's just I'm not sure I approve of your plan to sell your future to the Abyss, my fiancé, which Rose kind of dismisses, but I was it seems fair that he should be allowed to voice his concerns regarding your future, given you've just decided to marry.
Right, especially we've seen a Scourge in the story, and his family wanted him dead. Doesn't seem
to
like
be
the
fair,
best.
Rose does say it's a step up from Diabolist, and that is true.
It's true.
Only Crooked Hat's family wanted him dead, whereas the whole world seems to want Rose dead. So, progress.
That's true. This is better than it could have been.
But yeah, Alistair has to play the straight man here, and it's very funny. He's just poor guy.
Yeah, he's a champion. And so we see Blake's heart again, as Rose takes it out of the body that Blake had put it into in the abyss last time we were here, and promises to be a sanctuary and a dwelling place for Blake for as long as they need to sort their shit out until they start trying to destroy each other again. And Blake's like, cool deal. And so Rose cuts, severing Blake from his body, and he loses his eyes, his wings, and everything else. Which, like, I thought the mirror world. I mean, it's really exciting and fun being in Rose's head. I'm excited about it, but I remember how frustrating just like being in the mirror world was, and I feel like we're not gonna spend the rest of the story this way, inside of Rose. But I don't know how we get out. It's like the mirror world. It's like I don't know. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, where else are you going to put Blake at this point?
Maybe face all, make him a body.
Is that's? I mean, if that's the best plan,
It's not the best plan, but I'm like, who else has like I mean, technomancy could do something interesting. I guess like if he's just a spirit now, he could possess other crap. Maybe he'll become like did y'all read like the first Dresden Files book or something, right?
oh, like the first quarter of it, yeah.
Okay. So did you meet Bob the Skull?
Yes, yes.
Blake
I
could
thought that
be
might be where you were going with
Blake the
this.
Skull. One of my favorite parts about the Chosen Files was those potions that Bob helped with, and I feel like after the first like couple books they stopped doing it, and I was like, but this was so cool to like find all this weird shit.
Yeah, I remember we called that out too. It was like the most interesting part of this world right now is by far the potions and the way they were all so unique, and like it was like a really complicated system, or not, but not like in a bad way, like a really complex
Mhm.
system that had a lot of flexibility.
And how he had them in those like sport bottles or whatever.
Yeah,
That was just a really fun detail. And yeah, I feel like I don't know if the author was just like, these are too hard to come up with, or like this is like kind of weird and formulaic, but I feel like you stop getting those fun sequences, which is a bummer.
yeah.
Uh
I need to go back and I wasn't hating that book, but it was too early to get really into it. I should go back and give it another try.
yeah, I've been meaning to like finish the series. It's just the main character goes through a lot of shit and becomes kind of Blake in terms of like Blake was like a happier person at the start of the story and
Yeah.
just like becomes less fun as more trauma sets in, and that kind of happens to Harry.
Mm.
But he doesn't have an Evan, so it's less fun.
It's crazy. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like Wabo has said, like Evan wasn't planned in Pact. Like he just sort of added Evan when he came up, and he was like, "Oh, like this is a good character. I'm going to keep him around." And it's just like I just can't imagine Pact without Evan in it.
I know. And it kind of makes sense. Like, he doesn't show up until arc 5 or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because it felt like when he's introduced, it's like, there's a little boy in a hoodie or whatever. Like,
Mm.
cool. And yeah, how far Evan has come. What a mate.
But yeah, okay. So Blake is Blake now lives inside Rose, and he's getting his bearings. He views some old home movies, some memories, and yeah, finds out that Conquest is living in here too, which is just I missed this guy, right? Well, just what just what we needed in our lives again.
I did kind of miss Conquest,
Yeah.
but they still suck. One thing I like about Conquest that I find really interesting is that they've taken on a like female persona inside of Rose.
Mm.
And it seems like that's at least partially because Rose is like channeling Conquest, so she's drawing on memories of like powerful or imposing women to try to like channel
Mm.
that energy. But it's interesting that it's all women, and I wonder if that has to do with just how Rose is trying to emulate herself, or if there's something with gender that's happening there that's more significant. Because I feel like if I was thinking of like commanding scary people or whatever that I was trying to like emulate in a situation, I wouldn't limit myself to just women. Um, but it seems
Yeah.
like that's what's happening. And I wonder how much of it is that because conquest is inside of a woman, it's they're shaped that way, and how much of it is Rose like choosing stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my cop out answer is I feel like it's maybe a little bit of all of the above because it's
Uh-huh.
like because Rose is kind of his host now, and then also yeah, I mean like I think the direct call is like this, Conquest is channeling like Grandma Rose and this female minister, and it's like I guess if those are the like imperious, or those would be the two big imperious sort of figures in Rose's life, so it makes sense to those would have even more of an impact. I don't know, yeah.
Right. Um, but it's just it's a really neat way of learning more about Ambrose and
Mm,
Rose and it just I don't know like how possession possibly sort of works in the other verse, how a mind is conceptualized. It was just really cool being in
yeah.
this space and I didn't I wanted to learn a lot more about Rose and all of this stuff and I thought the only way we would maybe get some of that was some sort of like interlude and I love the chance to explore this and like it Blake reacting to the memories that Rose has that like I mean and seeing that they are things that happen to Ambrose, they've just been like cut and like split
Mm,
in weird ways where you can't really hear the name and so it's like presumably like this principal was really nice to Ambrose and tried to like, you know, encourage him and make him feel whatever. And the mom, their mom, his mom did say, "Oh, good job, honey," and like put it on the fridge or something. Like maybe Ambrose's parents weren't as awful as Blake remembers his parents being. But yeah, and just like maybe some things like maybe the principal actually had an impact on this child because he's like the best person in his family. Uh and I wonder if there's like part of the mystery of Blake and Rose is like how are they not as shitty as the other Thorburns or at least Blake.
yeah,
Um
I mean, that's like the horrifying part of this to me. Like, if this was me, if I was Blake in this situation, I'd find it existentially horrifying to be learning the details. Like, there's this bit with the sticker,
mhm.
and it's like Rose got the parts that are like the warm memories of the sticker and the feelings of like adulation stuff from her parents, and Blake got picture of bird. Um,
Right, Blake got like shiny pretty art.
yeah. And so it's like horrifying in a way to like, well, as you say, like there are all these people and moments in their life that had an impact, but that's just not a thing for Blake.
Mhm.
That's terrifying.
Mhm. And it's just it's interesting to reinforcing how or like explaining how Barbatorum could have done this to them because things are cut. They're not
Mm.
like they're not changed maybe. It's like the name is cut off and the uh details and aspects are like clipped down, but it doesn't seem like there's just like complete fabrications or whatever. It's interesting that Rose has the nice warm memories, at least in this instance, but she's like the cold calculating, I'm not gonna awaken so that my other half can take the downfall for me person. uh, yeah. I don't know. I do have a hard time picturing like this arch or something that's inside of them and
Yeah,
um
it's a very abstract like space for
mhm.
sure.
In a way that's really cool, but also I wish this was like a comic book or something so I could be like, okay.
Mm. This would be like this would have been prime for an extra material where we got like a picture or two.
But how would you explain like Blake's sketch of Rose's mind like
Yeah, yeah.
um
It just hasn't been mentioned, but Blake actually keeps a pretty extensive diary, just between chapters.
That's why it feels like there's like no downtime, because he spends all of it just like
Yeah.
writing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly. He's had tons of rest. He just spends it taking notes.
Ugh. Yeah, I like how you see him kind of navigating in this space and like figuring out how to uh function and how to move within it, and like um how he's filling up spaces and gaps, but you're reminded by that arch that like this isn't, they're not just going to like meld into one,
Hmm.
even though he starts to kind of like be subsumed into Rose when he's like present in her consciousness and stuff.
Yeah, and I think like he directly calls out there's the setup just in 15.3 with the pillar, because obviously we didn't really talk about it, but Alistair's drawing his diagram on that pillar in the library, and then Barbatorum smashes it.
Hmm.
And even when they put the pillar back together with Dionysus's special vines,
They
the
can't fix. Yeah.
yeah, it didn't fix the diagram because you can't repair what a demon's done. And this is like the imagery Blake gives you is that this space is the same. It's like Blake and Rose kind of fit together, but there's always going to be these cracks down the middle.
Right. Which is so awful. I'm
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, I think doesn't he say it's even worse? They're like, because it's serrated edges, they're actually grinding each other up, and it's like
Yeah,
they're actively damaging each other.
right. Because that's the whole demon
Good
thing.
old demons.
They're fun.
But yeah, okay. So we'll leave Team Inside Rose for a sec. Yeah, Blake just starts watching Rose on TV basically, and she's outside with Alistair, and yeah, they catch up with cousin couple rival. You know, the other group going for best Thorburn Bahame couple of the year. It's Ainsley and Peter.
And Ainsley's like, I don't know how much of Ainsley is like oblivious or in denial or like just kind of like, oh, oops, no, gross, or like, like, was she kind of into this and now she's like, oh wait, he's just an asshole who's using me. Was Is Peter able to genuinely like,
Care about other people.
yeah, like, or is this all like, obviously he's now using it to like piss off Alistair or whatever because Alistair doesn't like it and Peter's offended by that. And what Rose says about Peter wanting to exercise control over the situation is interesting and probably also true. But yeah, I can't tell if Ainsley actually is like, what? Or if like does she get it, or is she trying to pretend she doesn't get it?
You're struggling to figure out if anyone could possibly be that stupid. Basically, is sort of the vibe that I'm getting.
I mean, or just like, yeah, did she even really think about it, or is it just like, my town's being pulled into the abyss and I'm standing here in the fucking snow and I guess this person has their arm
Yeah.
around me and that's nice because it's like, maybe it's comforting, or maybe, it's like it's cold, and just like not thinking about like any of the implications really.
And
And
they've
then
all been
being
up
like,
for
oh fuck.
and they've all been up for like 24 hours.
Right.
Which, like, speaking from experience, can make you pretty terrible at processing things.
Right. And that almost might be the most likely thing. But I'm wondering if she was also like kind of into this and then realized like, oh, he's probably a dickbag and is trying to pretend that she wasn't ever into it.
And there's some great contrasts drawn between the Bahames and Thorburns here too, and how they greet their cousins.
Right. Ainsley's like, oh my, gives him this huge hug and then a bigger hug after she sees his hand and is so worried about him and just like, oh my gosh. And Peter's like, fuck you, Rose. And I love that Peter cares about Blake. He asks if he made it out. God, this part was so good. And Rose like taps her collarbone, which, what the fuck does that mean, Rose? She's like, you'll always have a piece of him in your heart? Like, what? And she's like, no. It's like, why are you tapping your collarbone? Like, what are you doing?
I agree. I'm on Peter's side in that one. Like, I think That's a reasonable guess.
Right. She didn't tap her head, and even then, like, yeah. But and then Ainsley freaks out when they're like, yeah, he's possessing her. And Peter's like, is that a good idea?
He's like, I'm the new guy, but that seems like a terrible idea to me. And I think everyone's like, yeah, it's pretty fucking awful.
I mean, I guess the ramifications of this are like Blake, like possession, right? So Blake could like take over and overpower, because that's what something possessing you does.
Hmm.
Right now it just seems like a house kinda that he's just sort of a little dude in a big house. But I guess if he was fighting Rose inside of her mind, he could do some serious damage.
I think he makes note in the chapter that her thoughts are malleable.
Right.
And then I think there's also a bit where where Conquest and him talk, and Conquest is like, "You don't know this arena very well, so or like, you're not used to fighting on this plane." So yeah, like I think you're right. I think if Blake got a bit more practice and wanted to, he could probably do some serious damage.
Right. Which is upsetting. It's this weird thing of like, these are the steps that felt like they had to be taken in the moment. And so I'm not like, oh my god, this is so bad. Like, why would you ever do this? And I guess it's good to be reminded that like this could be really bad for
I feel like that's just packed in
everyone.
a nutshell. Like at the time, kind of seemed like the early option, but now I'm here and I'm like, oh shit.
It seemed like the best idea at the time. Fact. Ugh.
um, there's also a bit I wanted to call out here where Rose looks at Green Eyes, and there's this weird thing going on where we're kind of getting Rose's stream of thought through Blake's stream of thought. And Rose looks at Green Eyes and is a smidge harsher on her appearance than I think Blake tends to be.
Right. She says a mockery of a mermaid, that like she should be a mermaid, but she's like barbed and horrifying, and that's mean. And it's freaky that for a second here, yeah, it's like Blake is really channeling Rose, and almost seems like he could be like subsumed, kind of, because he's thinking of Evan and Green Eyes in the context of like, yeah, how Rose sees them, and thinks of himself in the third person, and just like, it's kind of, yeah, freaky for a second.
Mm.
I guess that happens actually technically a little bit later, but it's still freaky.
Yeah. Well, I suppose let's. I guess let's get into it. Like we jump back inside Rose as Blake kind of comes to himself again. He tracks down Conquest in this church and sort of tries to make peace, but he's no Avery, and Conquest just starts choking him out.
Doesn't, yeah, not the biggest fan of peace. It's interesting that Blake's like, oh, you're like, letting Rose get you use your power, but also take up some space. Like, we can do that. That's cool. Like, use me or whatever. That's fine. Like, we can dwell harmoniously or something. And it was kind of funny that Conquest was just like, no, like, fuck you.
My favorite part of this is like how Blake has no arms, but he does have a neck. So he could be choked, but he can't do anything about it.
That feels like Abyssal bullshit if I've ever heard. And I guess I'm wondering, like, is Blake a boogeyman anymore? Because it seems like, based on the whole no arms thing, that his connection to the abyss has been like severed. Because his arms went away and were replaced with stick arms, and now he doesn't have those.
I definitely think that's like the implication at the moment is like the whole point of what Rose pulled was to separate Blake from the abyss.
Right. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, given what he did in Arc 13, I think that's a good idea.
What an arc. Yeah, and especially him being like, I promise I'll get you a big meal. And I guess he helped or something with the library.
True.
Um I don't know why, but for a second I envisioned Conquest as like the Girl Scouts in Dimension 20. I think the Starstruck Odyssey.
I haven't watched that one.
Oh, it's so good. They're a really minor thing that show up at one point, but they're like Girl Scouts, but they're also like running some sort of like international crime syndicate, and they're just really like aggressive and kind of mean, and it's funny. Yeah. You should watch that one.
Oh, I've got an ever growing list of Dimension 20 seasons I need to catch up on.
Yeah, same. But that was a fun one. But yeah, we get more like kind of cute Rose and Alistair, and Alistair's a lot better at this than Rose is. We also find, the reason that the reason that Wildbow wrote Pact was so he could comment that Blake was not seeing the world through rose tinted glasses.
Yeah, the rest of the story was built from there.
When we were throwing around ideas for this podcast title, I think I threw out Through Pale Lenses, as though we were like examining Pact through pale, and sort of a play on like through rose-colored glasses or whatever. And Jenny was just kind of like, I don't know, it sounds weird, something. And then like, I think Pale in Comparison is a superior name, but like after having read this, I was like, see, like he was there all along.
Yeah, I mean the other one that's all throughout this story is the idea that Blake is not very good at self-reflection because he didn't have one. I always enjoyed that.
Wow.
Yeah, Pact is very good at this stuff. Absolutely.
It's everywhere.
But yeah, okay, so I guess things are looking pretty bad for Blake at this point. He's being choked out by Conquest. You know, how could things possibly get worse? Oh, Miss Lewis is here, and she's pretty PO'd about the loss of the house, and then also Rose taking this other job offer instead of joining their firm, which I think is classic lawyer shenanigans. You could probably speak to that, Malia. But like I've seen The Good Wife, and there's all that kind of interdepartmental rivalry, or interfirm rivalry. So yeah.
With judges, if a judge offers you a job, you like kind of have to take it, supposedly. It's this weird thing of like your career officers and stuff will tell you like you can't say no, like you have to take it. So you have to be like careful about who you apply for or whatever, and you have to communicate a lot with them, because if another judge offers you a position, you have to kind of be like, hey, I have a job now, bye, like to the other judges that you've applied for. But I mean, like, it's still, I don't know, it's still a job. Like, they just want the judges to like them. But it's a weird thing. Anyway, Miss Lewis. I still like Miss Lewis, even though this is scary and
right,
bad. But she was just established as like so cool.
Well, she's you know, as far as demon lawyer people go, she seems like the cool one.
Yeah, she helped bind June. And it's just, I mean, it's interesting. These lawyers don't seem to like their clients. And it's just like, why are you
their
doing
clients
this?
are Diabolists, to be fair. They're not particularly likable.
But like, so are they? Like, aren't you also complete shit? Like, why are you doing this? Like, is part of joining the firm and like your karma or whatever is reset, or take, whatever is zeroed out, that like you become a kind of okay person again, and Diabolists still suck. It does, reflecting on that, it does feel like a very like attorney thing, that like even if you're like, my client is wrong, if they're like your client in a world where you couldn't like fire your client or whatever, you are supposed to like advocate for your client to the best of your ability. So the idea that even though they might not love that demons are destroying the universe, it's their job, man. we have an adversarial legal system, and this is just part of it.
I'm not educated in the ways of lawyerings, but I don't imagine adversarial lawyer systems is the way to do whether the universe gets destroyed or not. Like, there's got to be a point where you can sort of draw the line and say, no, we don't need a devil's advocate for that one, actually. Like,
that's another pun this whole book was based on. Yeah. The whole like I was expecting this is like kind of a badass line.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what it says at this point about Conquest saying it first, and then Rose kind of like echoing them feels somewhat significant. I mean, Conquest realized what was happening first, or I don't know. A good sign, I think, was that Rose channels Conquest and realizes that it's hurting Blake and that Conquest is hurting Blake, and so she like stops. That seems like a good sign, even though at the end of this she's like, okay, here we go. I think it's interesting that the lawyers can't benefit from the house being in the abyss. Maybe it's like not recognizable enough as why is the house important without Barbatorum in it? Maybe they just do they just want Barbatorum? Is it something about the domains or the just the history of the demonic whatever? I guess maybe the abyss can like change things around enough, recycle things enough that it's not useful. I don't get it.
Or maybe there was something under that house.
I know. And now it lives in a pillar. I don't know. I like that. You know, I think Rose makes a pretty good attempt at dodging this whole situation. You know, can I have some time to get my affairs in order? Like that sounds like a yes.
Yeah,
But
it's
Miss
a good
Lewis,
try.
yeah, she's like, no, you have to
I do like
commit.
that. Yeah, but Miss Lewis is like, we're just going to need an affirmative right now. And then there's just like a hella awkward silence. Like, it's just.
Take that as a no. And just, this is fun. I don't know if this is, because again, like, is Barbatorum coming back? Are the demon lawyers like the final boss, or is Faceall gonna come back? Like, what? Or is Rose the final boss? Like, I don't really know, but fighting demon lawyers is exciting. So it doesn't seem like they could win. Like Ms. Lewis remembers Blake because reasons. And I think some of those reasons are like how fucking powerful these people are.
Yeah, well, that's like, doesn't she like instantly know that Blake's in there too? Like, she just shows up, she's like, Alistair, Rose, Mr. Thorburn, who can't return, the greeting at the moment, which is like,
Right, like, how
does she even know that Conquest is choking him? Like, how much detail? Yeah.
I really like that she greeted Blake, even though last time she saw Blake, she sucked by not saving him. I wonder if she wishes she had taken, because I think he said, yeah, okay, I'll join the firm or something, hadn't he? But she was like, no, we don't want you by.
Yeah.
And I wonder if she wishes she had taken that, although I guess maybe it just wouldn't have counted.
Yeah, because I think at that point he was in the Abyss, so he wasn't the Thorburn heir anymore.
Right.
And I think they want the Thorburn heir to get the house, or they did.
Right. And so now we're gonna fight. I can't imagine. This town is so fucked. Like,
I'd rather live in Kennet right now.
Yep. Yes. Yep. The only thing that'll fix this is if the Behames have like built and stored a giant time turner and they can just like flip it around.
We have to go back.
I don't even know how far back you need to go to fix this, but a ways.
But yeah, well, so I guess that's the 3 chapters.
Woo!
We
did it.
Went out of the frying pan and into the fire. So yeah, should we do a bit of a pale in comparison section?
Yeah.
what reminded you of Pale in these chapters?
We have some sort of interesting ones written down. Do you want to
Oh yeah,
talk
sorry,
first?
I didn't mean to steal these. I just was making notes of them as I read the chapters. So I'm happy to share them.
Yeah, please.
Um, I've heard the big one we're going to talk about because obviously the last chapter of Pale that could just come out was 23.f, which was Dorian and Fluorescence running around as hosts. And then obviously now we've got Blake possessing Rose as a
Hmm.
spirit. Doing what the Girl by Candlelight couldn't. So I thought it would be interesting to sort of look at how that's going for the different parties so far.
Yeah, I really loved in that chapter, like, um, depending on who was more in control, kind of like the pronouns would change for Dorian and Fluorescence, and it felt like a pretty smooth flow back and forth, and like they had a relatively intuitive grasp of how to assist each other,
Mm,
and I've seen I feel like there's a little bit of that with Blake, like thinking of himself in third person, and we've seen Conquest pronouns change, and presumably Blake could. I mean, Blake is incredible at most of the things he does, and I could see him really like getting a good grasp of this space quickly.
yeah. I mean, well, if there's one thing Blake's done in the past, it's adapt to being in new physical situations, like
Hmm.
Mirrorverse, being a stick. Um, yeah.
Wings flying, he did that pretty
Yeah.
well.
Um, I also like it's fun reading this after because Pale's also talked a lot about like specifically like Matthew's hosting stuff and how you like carve out and I think this has come up a lot in terms of Brie as well, but you carve out very specific hallows within yourself for stuff to host in. Like you
Mhm.
need to sort of make room for stuff to possess you. Um, and it's really funny having that in my mind now and reading this because you can see how Blake and Rose were able to pull this off without any preparation because of their nature. Like Blake does just sort of fit into the hollow parts of Rose because
Right.
that's what he is.
Dang, yeah. They both have so many empty spaces and yeah, and they match. Um
Yeah,
that's cool.
but then also because of the demon stuff, that it's also somehow a terrible fit at the same time.
Right, it's all so bad.
Um, I also was thinking, going back to Blake being the guardian in the abyss. That whole thing felt very Charles's Undercity vibe to me,
Mm,
like the way you literally have to climb to the top of the tower, kill everybody else on your way there, and then you get the cool job as the guardian at the top. Um,
oh,
like I can kind of see why the abyss was something that was on Team Charles for a bit.
right. Um and just the idea that it wouldn't lead to like a horribly broken person
Yeah.
at the top and would lead to like Blake is kind of a super strong badass whatever, but also like he's not okay.
Yeah. But the abyss almost seems more honest about that than Charles, right? Like Charles is pretending there's this honor and nobility in everybody being fucking miserable until they're at the top and they're a different kind of miserable, whereas the abyss is just like, haha, sucked in, like
Mhm.
which is, it knows what it's doing at least.
Yeah. It's it likes it. I don't know. It likes taunting people.
Yeah. And then yeah, like I guess speaking of deals with the abyss, there was obviously also Marisica who lost that nail, and then the abyss sort of turned on her, which I thought was interesting because
Mhm.
I wonder like what her deal with the abyss might have been. Like we've seen Blake cutting a lot of deals with it in this story, and
Right.
like I just wonder what about losing that nail made the abyss so PO'd at Marisica.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it reminded me of just the concept of like boogeymen bouncing back. Like if you bounce back another or whatever, it'll
Yeah.
come back stronger. And
So maybe she
hmm,
didn't make a deal so much as the nail somehow gave her the ability to force a deal, and then without the nail, the abyss no longer had to do what she wanted, and it was pissed off at her.
right. And just it's more fun to uh attack the person that just had the thing. And yeah, because it felt more than just the boogie people were like angry at having been controlled, and felt more like they were being compelled by the abyss to attack her.
Yeah. Oh, well, I
Yeah.
guess we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like my brain can't come up with anything at the moment, but it does seem, the abyss is so much bigger and stronger than Marisica, obviously, and thinking of her, trying to use it as a tool. Wild. One thing that I just thought of when we were talking about Marisica that kind of relates to these chapters is when Avery and Verona are running around, when they're trying to circle around Kennet and block off the Aurum, I think. And
Yep.
they kind of fall into these spaces that like aren't the abyss, but like aren't not the abyss.
Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of this like tree area, like the outskirts, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, because it's definitely. I get the impression from Pale that the abyss is kind of like the ruins where it's like it's 4 dimensional. Like there's the normal 3 dimensions, but then there's also this concept of like depth,
Hmm.
and you can go like down layers. And so yeah, like the where these guardians live, like where Blake was gonna have his chair, and where Avery and Verona were, like that must be like the top layer.
Right.
And whereas then stuff like the drains is probably much further down.
Oh, and then that's interesting thinking of like maybe the tenements and the library are kind of existing in the same space but on different layers.
Yeah, because there's a thing with the abyss kind of mapping to Earth, but then
Mhm.
also not really.
Mhm.
It's very confusing.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it would make just as much sense if the tenements had kind of been like shoved off somewhere, or were somehow like kind of still reachable from parts of Jacob's Bell, uh, or maybe
Mm.
almost like showed up in a like a vibes kind of way, and then like the individual could kind of get back out to approximately where they had come down. It's cool. It's a cool space that is awful, and I hate.
Yeah, like because the abyss's whole thing is it's just kind of like, or you could not, right? Like you could just it's just like the shittiest way of doing stuff.
Right. Like, and who needs, why do we need to recycle people or whatever? And like,
Well,
why?
because the ones that don't get picked up by the abyss, they go to horrible places like the paths, which are so terrible.
I mean, I guess maybe if they end up in the Fae court, they'd be like, no, they'd probably rather be. I don't know. They're both bad.
Yeah, God, that's a Sophie's choice, isn't it? Like I could imagine someone dying and the psychopomp comes up and it's like, well, you're either going to the abyss or one of the fairy courts. Which
Oh
will it
my
be?
god.
It's just like can you can you just wipe me from existence? I don't want my soul to be immortal
Can I
anymore.
go to a judge contest? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I choose to perish.
Are there any like the paths are more neutral, but is there anywhere like cool and good to go
So,
to?
some parts of the ruins seem alright.
Yeah.
Like there's the happy parts of the ruins. There was that place Grimsey lived
That,
in Pate, like
yes.
the nature. Like if you get that more beautiful part of the nature realm,
Yep.
that seemed nice.
That seemed nice.
The Warrens.
No thanks. Uh,
Um, but yeah, well, I guess then it's time, Malia, for you to hit us with that bold and specific prediction
woo!
that you've been holding on to this whole episode.
Yeah, I've been trying to consider. Yeah, so I think Blake's gonna get out of Rose. I think yeah, I've said I think we're not done dealing with Alexis in this story. Um
When you say Blake's going to get out of Rose, any details?
oh god.
Or feel free. You could say no. I'm very much putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious if you've got any specifics.
Yeah, that's more fun. I feel like for these chapters I really need something like absolutely out there. Um Okay, so we've seen like stick bodies. I wonder if okay, this is bizarre. Okay, what if we got like a reverse Adam and Eve situation where like one of Rose's ribs is used to make as a like foundation for like a body for Blake.
Sorry, I laughed because I don't know why, but when you first said that, the picture that came into my head was just a rib with googly eyes and like little booties on it. And just like, this is Blake now. Like,
oh my god. A decent body would be like if he could see, well, so I was like, oh, maybe like if he could like possess a bird, but then like that sucks for the bird. But so then like a dead bird, but like that's gross. Like,
I mean, there is a dead bird in the party right now.
yeah. But Evan needs his own space.
Well, I mean, he's leaking. Like, isn't that a whole thing? They keep needing to juice Evan up.
Oh, that's right. Alistair did help fix him up. That's interesting. I don't know if that'd be fun for them. As Evan would be like, wow, Blake, you are really sad. This is harshing my vibe.
But then on the other hand, would you rather be roomies with Conquest or Evan?
Evan.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I'm just thinking, like, would it be good for Evan? But he'd be fine, maybe. Yeah. They take one of Rose's ribs and they use clay to make. That just seems so ridiculous. I don't know.
No, I love that prediction.
Cool.
There's gonna there'll be fun stuff to talk about with that prediction later, I reckon.
Fun. Either way, I hope googly eyes will be involved. I'm trying to remember. Did you see that picture of someone's tattoos? I'm sorry for forgetting, of birds. And then after I was like, with googly eyes. That picture is so good. It was like, this is exactly what I was picturing. Cool.
Sweet. Well then I guess with the ribeye prediction logged in, we should move on to the discussion question.
Woohoo.
Yeah, do you want to introduce it? Because you're the ones who asked it. I had no part in this one. I'm just stealing Jenny's thunder on it.
Yeah. So last week's discussion question was, what is a book title that would appear in this Abyssal library for a Wildbow character? And we could start with Captain Rhino, who suggested a couple of different books. This one is so good. Okay. Oh my god, they're all so good. Okay. Sorry. Biography of an Unappreciated Dad for Brett. What?
I love sorry, I do love the idea that like the book that would tempt and curse Brett is just like him. You know, like, you know, it's not the lies they told you or anything. It's not about other people. It's just, hey, like, you open that book up and it's just a mirror, you know? Like, that's just...
I really want that. I want it to be a mirror, and then I want, like, some boogeyman or something to pop out around the corner and go, oh, like, burn.
Yeah, like, because, like, Verona is obviously trying her hardest for her custom bookstore to be ethical.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if a trip to the library for certain customers is maybe not out, you know, like if maybe there's a couple of good books in the library for Verona to go scout. I don't know. Start up a partnership between the library and her bookstore.
It's amazing. Also, I just realized Peter didn't ask about Catherine, which rude.
That's a good point.
But yes, another book title that Captain Rhino mentioned would be What Avery Isn't Telling You, and that's for Nora.
Yeah, I love that one.
It's really good. Remaking the Unmade is for Lucy and Verona, just to make us all happy inside.
Yeah, R.I.P. Mal and Breastbiter.
And then 100 Years Lost, Volume 2 for all finders everywhere.
Yeah, and me. I'll take that one.
Just immediately open.
Yeah. This is how I die in the Abyss. If I saw, like, what was the deal with Pisces? Like, that's it for me. Like, Go on without me, gang.
That would have been kind of a funny, because we thought that like what would be your book or whatever would be like too depressing and personal and whatever, but like your like wild bow related book or something,
Yeah.
like it's something that you would want to know and you wouldn't be able to help yourself.
A correct prediction for Pale. That'd do me. I get one. I like, I can die happy. I'll finally get one thing about the story right, and then I can go out content.
Well, it's just because you got some unpacked that were just, you ran
I
out.
think I got one.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
Well, what's yours?
like the extended explanations and interludes of like, yeah, just like lingering questions I have about Johannes and like weird things where
Yeah.
like I don't know if it's a clue or if it's just like a little wild bow editing thing and it's fine, but like in 15.4 they were like Green Eyes, Peter Ainsley, and the witch hunter are out there, and like there wasn't a witch hunter when we got out there, and then like the faceless woman just sort of disappeared, and there was this one like big feathered boogeyman who was really like cool and amazing, and they go off to fight the dragon with him or whatever, but then he's not there when they fight the dragon. Just like things like that where I'm like, what is this? Where did they go? Where did they go?
No comment. Yeah, that's like I don't know if this was one of the books down there. Maybe I've just forgotten, but I feel like you could probably get a 2-for-1 deal of Rose and Blake just with like a book that was like, what was Grandma Rose's plan?
Oh my god.
And I know when I was up to this part of the story, I would have gone for that one too.
Oh, crap.
Another discussion question answer we got was from Beleg Tal, who said their book was for a character in Worm. But they didn't say which one. But the book's title is just "You Needed Worthy Opponent." So unfortunately, we will never know who that was for.
Yeah, no idea. Really cryptic.
Too obscure a reference for me.
Indeed. Oh, I think another good one for a Worm character would be how to get everyone to work together.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. And then finally, a bird says they think the library could get a clean sweep on all of Wild Bow's protagonists with a book titled "How to Save All of the People You Love."
Yeah, and I think the response there, the Discord chat gave to this one was the book would just contain the words "you can't."
Yeah, that would fuck them up. Yeah. Well, I think this is kind of a fun new discussion question idea. Do you want to pitch it?
Yeah. If you're keen for this one, this was just the first thing that popped into my head.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what would it take for you to accept an Abyssal job offer?
So would this specifically be for being a gatekeeper or just like...
I mean, I reckon it'd be interesting to hear if people have other... Because there's other stuff you can do this, right? Like, there's be the apprentice to Leonard in Pale. That's a position that keeps reopening. Yeah, I was picturing the gatekeeper stuff. Yeah,
I guess the Scourge is kind of like, did Rose? She kind of accepted a job.
That's true. Yeah, maybe more the gatekeeper-y vibes than just because otherwise people could cheat. They could just be like, well, I'm just going to be a cool Scourge that rules
with my awesome top hat.
Yeah, and my domain that's in the abyss because that's my happy place. That was weird.
That was upsetting. Yeah, his poor family.
I mean, I guess Verona's got a third of hers in Kennet below, so
yeah, but they're trying to make it a nice place.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, what would it take for you to accept a job as an Abyssal gatekeeper? I guess.
Sweet. Do you have any ideas?
I'm just like, I'm too happy to sit in one spot for hours at a time anyway. Like, like like just a good internet connection might honestly do it.
See, I'm a little concerned about like, do I have to fight the bookworm or whatever? Like, Presumably Blake doesn't just get to say you shall not pass or whatever. Like he'd have to like fight people and
Yeah. Well, I assume the Abyss gives you like,
sweet
a
powers.
karmic advantage and a bit of a boost, like
Yeah, that's true.
um but yeah, I mean that would be my concern for me in this job is I'm not quite as good at fighting as Blake. I have less experience. So yeah, like a couple of machine guns with magic bullets that kill boogeymen wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, actually, something like that could make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But then you'd
What
get
about
like
yourself?
the Matrix boogeyman.
The one.
Yeah. Oh my god. I don't know. Like, part of me wants to say like a lot of books or whatever, but I don't know that I'm like that good at reading anymore. Just like a lot of crafting projects and like really good food, just like stuff that I don't think the Abyss would really give me because it wouldn't want me to. It could probably make Twist the Craft project somehow to be awful, but then I want to do it.
There's a 100,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, but at the end it turns out it's missing a piece. Also, it's a landscape picture of just like the ocean.
No.
So it's all blue. I did a jigsaw like that. I've actually got it up on the wall. It's like
what?
it's this map, but it's all yellow. Like it's like this artistic map, and it was just like it was such a nightmare to put together. Like I don't know who designed it. A fucking idiot. I mean, but like I'm talking, I built the damn thing, so like I'm not any smarter.
Why
Like,
did you? I mean, it's cool that you were proud enough that you were like, this is memorialized forever on my wall. But
I have a bunch. I've got like in
no,
this room, I got seven puzzles I built, and I built the frames for them and everything.
wow.
It was like a little phase I went through.
What's your favorite?
There's one at the. Oh, I'm pointing at it like you can see. It's this scene from The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. I'll
Oh,
post like a photo in the Discord or something if anybody wants.
yeah. I was
But
just
yeah,
the restaurant we had my bridal shower at actually had a puzzle on the wall that was the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, like the whole thing, not just the
whoa,
creation of Adam. It was really cool. Um,
how big like was the puzzle?
um,
Because I feel like you could get pretty big with that.
it was. I almost want to say, trying to remember how big a meter is.
Oh, I can translate from it's about 3 feet to a meter.
Okay, so I'd say like maybe a little like 1.75 meters long and like
Okay,
I
wow,
guess like a meter high or something. It was pretty big. It took up a lot of space on the wall.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
But yeah, well, I guess unless there's anything else, thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a rating and review. To support our podcast, go to patreon.com/doofmedia. And if you'd like to support Wildbow as he continues to write fantastic stories, go to patreon.com/Wildbow.
You can follow the pod on Twitter at Pale Comparison or send us an email at paleincomparisonpod@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, where you can answer a discussion question and share your thoughts on this episode. In addition, if you would like to see all of my predictions laid out, check out our episode description for a link to a prediction tracker. Next episode, we will be covering chapters 15.6 and 15.7.
A much saner pairing of chapters. Also, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I only just learned that there's a spreadsheet with all of your episodes and then what chapter of Pale they correspond to, which is great for people catching up. So I guess not really the audience who's listening to this, but that's a great resource. So if you've got a friend and you're trying to get them into this podcast and they're reading Pale, send them that.
Yeah, I also tried to I should put a better link to that spreadsheet somewhere. I've been trying to update the episode descriptions, and I think I've done all the ones on like podcatchers, but not the Doof website or YouTube yet.
Oh,
But
that sounds like a slog.
yeah. Just they're not done yet. But yeah, hopefully that's useful because someone on Reddit was like, when can I start this podcast? And I was like, hey, I can figure it
Yeah, I
out.
just sent it. Kipos, who will be listening to this soon, hopefully, is
Woo!
currently in the process of catching up, and I sent her the link to because she was going through that. She's behind in both the podcast and the story, but now she won't be.
Yay.
But yeah, so I guess closing out with a fun fact, I found this fact, which is it's illegal to own just one guinea pig in Switzerland.
Because they need a friend.
Yeah.
That's so
They're,
nice.
they're social creatures, and Switzerland was like, make sure they've got friends.
Oh, I love
Which is
that.
like, yeah, I think that's a good policy. Like, my family did that growing up with dogs and cats and stuff too, and I think it's just a good idea.
Yeah.
That's like, it's not always feasible, obviously, but it's nice.
Right. And with something like a guinea pig, it's probably a little bit easier to just kind of like have two.
Yeah, I feel like with a guinea pig, if you've got the setup for one,
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't take much to throw another one in there because the cages are usually pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of guinea pigs growing up
Huh.
in our place.
At one
And they
point
kept getting pregnant.
Nice.
Well, we kept buying girls. It was like, it was a real
What?
Jurassic Park moment. Yeah. Well, no, we kept buying girls from shady guinea pig sellers who it turns out weren't girls.
They weren't girls,
Yeah.
yeah. We at one point had mice. Jenny convinced mom that mice were cute or something, and she's like never really gotten over it. But yeah, we couldn't have one mouse because it'd be sad. And then I think it was like, so we had two mice, but then one of them, we were like holding it outside of the cage or whatever, and it got off into some like hole somewhere. And so then we needed to get another mouse because then the one that was left needed a friend, but then the first mouse came back. So then we had three mice. Mom was just so affronted at this, like, that she had three mice living in her house that she was feeding and taking care of.
Or at least in our family, this was what always happens with pets is like, as a parent, I feel like once you like open the door a little bit, it's the floodgates open and suddenly pets just, yeah, it's like, oh, we need a mouse. Oh, okay, we'll get a second one. Then somehow you end up with three. And it's just like, what, how has this happened?
Always.
Like, yeah, because we had mice for a bit at one point, but a crow broke into their cage and took them.
Oh.
And that was it for us.
Yeah, that's a lot. Poor babies.
Well, my sister saw it happen too. They were her mice.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, they've got a lot of... My sister's watched a lot of their pets die. They were vegetarian for most of their teenage years because
Wow.
they saw some stuff.
That's awful.
Yeah, and then like a bunch of times we buried pets, and then there were foxes who'd come and dig them up.
Oh,
Yeah, good times, good times.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining me, Jenny. This is fun.
Yeah, no, thank you. I like, yeah, what a trio of chapters. I was making fun before, but like, great chapters to come and get a chance to revisit.
Definitely.
And yeah, well, so I guess Malia will be back next week.
Woo.
To almost round out Arc 15.
I'm so excited. Cool. Bye, everyone.
See ya.